the Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C., and previously a senior policy advisor on the State Department's Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team. Laura, welcome to DW. How do you view this agreement that's now in place? Can that be a first step to lasting peace?
Well, watching those images of these three young women emerging from the smothering darkness of Hamas captivity into their mother's arms, I can't help but think of rebirth. And I am wondering whether this can be a symbol of what we're, can look forward to for the region. I think it all depends on one thing, which is leadership, because these kind of trade-offs, whether it's a hostage deal or a peace deal, are a kind of pain-gain trade-off. And look, it's painful. The Israeli leadership is talking about, how painful it is, and so are the Israeli people, because they understand that by saving lives today, they're risking lives tomorrow by freeing these Palestinian prisoners, some of whom have blood on their hands or convicted murderers. The same can be said on the Palestinian side. It's a pain-gain trade-off, and will they have the leadership that will take them down a peaceful path? Trump here in the United States is clearly a change in mode, and we're all hopeful, fingers crossed, that his way will provide the necessary kind of hard, principled leadership that will bring us more success than Biden. President Biden today, when he gave his final statement, there is a kind of, wistfulness to it. He was listing like a ship. He was defensive about his support for Israel. And he had trouble actually even saying who they were handing the hostages off from, whether it was Hamas or Hezbollah. He just called them the people who held them. Biden delivered a kind of loyalty to Netanyahu, and Trump is going to demand it. And what we're hoping is that kind of demand for loyalty will be the necessary push to move things forward.
Now, at this stage of the war, how far is Israel in its goal of destroying Hamas entirely?
It's a great question. That was one of the war goals, right? Netanyahu said that we had these twin aims. One is to destroy Hamas, and the second is to free the hostages. Now, a lot of people said those two goals were incompatible. What does it mean to destroy Hamas? A lot of people have said, how can you destroy an idea? What I would say is it's not about the number of combatants that you can kill. Obviously, they've killed many thousands of Hamas combatants. It's how much support Hamas will receive. The United States, the incoming U.S. government has said that Hamas will not rule in Gaza. That said, if the Palestinian population still supports not only Hamas leaders, but their agenda, which is not a two-state solution, but the eradication of the Jewish state completely, it's not about 1967 for them, it's about 1948, no Jewish state, then it's going to be pretty hard.
Now, what do you think needs to happen next? And you touched upon this when you were talking about the different approach that the Trump administration will presumably have. So what needs to happen next?
Well, it's fascinating. Trump brokered the Abraham Accords. I would say for his second term, he's got two things in mind: oil wells and Nobels, right? He'd like to create economic prosperity, which means partnering with those oil-rich Gulf states, and Nobel Prize, which he felt like he'd been cheated out of by not being rewarded for the Abraham Accords. If he expands the Abraham Accords, I would call it the Benjamin Accords, because I think for him, for Trump, it's Trump Incorporated. It's all about the Benjamins, baby, the dollar signs. If they can harness that, starting first by pushing back on Iran, I think that would be goal number one. Iran has been the kind of bad actor, funding and supporting and arming and training all of these proxies that have been debilitated, if not destroyed, by Israel over the last 15 miserable months. But I think Trump's agenda, number one in the Middle East, will figuring out, pushing Iran to decide between a bomb, which they want, or bankruptcy, which they don't want. So he'll try to negotiate a deal with Iran. If he doesn't get his way diplomatically, then perhaps Israel will get their way militarily, which they've been hoping to do for a long time, which is to strike Iran at the heart of its nuclear facilities.
Now, how will the resignation of the hardline National Security Minister Ben-Gvir weaken Netanyahu's cabinet? Will this affect what happens in the next phases of this agreement?
Well, domestic politics are always more important than we give it credit for. When I worked on the Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team under President Obama, it's what undid us, and the talks collapsed actually because of this kind of domestic political pressure. Here, I'm not so sure, because I think that enough opposition members of the other Israeli partners, potential partners, to team up with Netanyahu can keep that government standing. The stakes are simply too high for this kind of petty partisan politics to undermine the goal. So if Netanyahu wants to stand by the ceasefire, he has every ability to do so, because the Israeli partners are willing to kind of jump in and say, we might disagree with you on every single issue, but the ceasefire and peace is too important. Let's bring the hostages home.
But Netanyahu yesterday felt compelled to say that this is a temporary ceasefire and sort of kept the door open to continue the war. Why do you think he said that yesterday at a stage where everything was still very much up in the air?
Well, I think he wanted to make it public to the world, not only for his domestic constituents, but also to the outgoing and incoming American leadership. There's very little trust right now between any of the parties, including to a certain degree between America and Israel. This has been the most tense period of relations between Israel and America in recent memory, at least according to Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator who told me that just last week. So what Netanyahu is saying is he has it in writing, or as the Italians say, la carta canta, the paper sings. He actually produced a transcript of a recent conversation with him and President Trump, incoming President Trump, with verbal assurances that if their security needs are not met, if Israel's security needs are not met, they can resume war. And the second piece of paper, which he produced, was an official U.S. guarantee that Israel's security needs are going to be primary and not take a secondary seat to any other negotiations. Because at the end of the day, Netanyahu, his reputation that's been built, his nickname is Mr. Security, and he's been trying ever since October 7th to reestablish that.
Thank you very much. Laura Blumenfeld there. Thank you.
Thank you.